version. AMD gets the same treatment as NVIDIA. That should not exist. Anyway, we're gonna compare the $349 9060 XT 16 gigabyte versus the 5060 8 gigabyte card, which is technically a $299. And I say technically now because guess what? We already did the video about the 5060 a few days ago, as you guys already saw, and we showed at the time that there was the only MSRP model, which is the Prime that I have right here at $299. Micro Center showed that they had some. They're gone. And not only are they gone, they're gone for good. Like, the including out of stock items doesn't show up anymore. People can't really be running out and buying these, right? For those looking for a high-end custom gaming experience, look no further than Falcon Northwest. Falcon Northwest has been building PCs made for gamers for over 30 years with a focus on a true high-end gaming experience. Custom cases available only through Falcon Northwest feature state-of-the-art testing and design to ensure that every component is performing at their best through thermal imaging and rigorous lab testing designed and overseen by the Falcon Northwest founder himself. With a complete lineup of systems ranging from small to large, every Falcon Northwest system includes a 3-year warranty policy and a year of 2-way overnight shipping coverage, providing the ultimate peace of mind. To see all that Falcon Northwest has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below. All right, anyway, this isn't about the 5060, it's just what we're kind of comparing to the 9060 XT because these two are within price parity of each other. So this is the 9060 XT Reaper model, which is an MSRP model. It's from Power Color. It is a very small, very compact 2-fan design. It uses a single 8-pin PCI Express. Obviously, we're comparing it to the MSRP. Yes, it was MSRP. 5060 Prime, which is a non-TI model, and it's an 8 gigabyte card because the 5060 only gets the 8 gigabyte treatment. It's funny, it's like, I don't feel like there should even be a treatment when it comes to the Power Color or the 9060 XT because it should only be a 16 gigabyte card, just like I feel the 5060 should only be a 16 gigabyte card. Just like I feel every card moving forward in the future should be a 16 gigabyte or greater card. But anyway, that's in a perfect world. Let's do this. Let's go and talk about specs real quick, and then I have obviously put the 9060 XT through all of our testing. This round versus the 5060, I told you I didn't do like generational performance improvements when it comes to looking at things like power draw and temperatures and all that sort of stuff because I really saved it for against the 9060 XT because I really think right now it's really more relevant to anyone looking to buy a brand new entry-level GPU. I say entry-level because there is nothing high-end, there's nothing even mid-end for these cards as far as I'm concerned. This is now the buy-in price point, which is anywhere between $300 and $350, which is crazy because we should have $200 to $250 models that exist at these performance figures. So that just shows how much the pricing scale has scooted up, where the performance scale has stayed down towards the bottom. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about specs right here. The 9060 XT is on Navi 44. It's RDNA 4, obviously. It's a 4-nanometer FinFET technology with 29.7 billion transistors. It's a monolithic. It's funny that they have to state that because AMD, as you know, does like to do more chiplet type designs, and their GPUs are no exception. A lot of the GPUs that you see from them in the future are going to be a chiplet type of design. Architecture-wise, the GB206 for the 5060. It is also a 5nm/4N FinFET architecture, so they are very similar in that aspect. 21.9 billion transistors. Interestingly enough, though, this is running 8 gigabytes of GDDR7, whereas the 16 gigabyte and 8 gigabyte models of the 9060 XTs are still on GDDR6. So that only strengthens my argument that there should absolutely not be an 8 gigabyte model, and because it's running GDDR6, which has been around for years now, there's no reason to have to charge $50 more for it. Unfortunately, this is AMD still following the suit of the yellow brick road, or I should say the green brick road at this point that NVIDIA has paved, telling AMD, hey, guess what? Buyers are suckers, they'll buy anything, so you can just charge more for it. And I think a lot of people have already expressed their disappointment that AMD, rather than kind of pushing back against that and saying, let's give the greatest value we can, we'll give you the highest technology and the highest performance we can per dollar, they're just like, hey, we can get away with charging more because look, NVIDIA fanboys are doing it. Why wouldn't AMD fanboys do it? So unfortunately, it's not all RGB and rainbows when it comes to in fact, there's no RGB on either of these cards. But anyway, I digress. It's not all RGB and rainbows when it comes to AMD because unfortunately they've shown that they're willing to squeeze every penny out of you guys as well. Anyway, moving on to the rest of the specs, it is the 9060 XT is a 160 watt card, whereas the 5060 is a 145 watt card. So they are very similar when it comes to their power draw. No surprise there. These are fairly small, efficient designs. Let's go ahead and jump right into the benchmarks because so neither of these cards are designed for 4K. You should really never be considering 4K gaming with these cards, period. There's absolutely no reason for that to be the case. But what I will say is that I did 4K testing on both of these cards, even though I didn't show 4K in the 5060, I only showed a handful of them. I did test 4K with both of these cards, not as an indicator of how good they are at 4K gaming, just putting a very difficult load on the cards to see how far they sort of separate out when it comes to their architectures, as well as showing that that 16 gigabyte frame buffer is important when it comes to future games, even when we talk about 1440p. So when it comes to Speedway, there's no surprise that the 5060 beats out the 9060 XT simply because of the fact that NVIDIA is still an entire generation ahead on their RT Core design. So it's a 3488 versus a 2925. Now, obviously, ray tracing is only part of the story, because as soon as you start looking at rasterization or raster performance, which is just straight up using those stream processors / CUDA cores, shaders, whatever you want to call them, it really paints a different story, because they nearly perfectly flip their position by putting the 9060 XT on top at 7337 versus a 6425 on our times by extreme score. If we go ahead and take a look at F1 1080p, you can. This is where you start to see some, depending on the title, some pretty big separation between the two. So the 9060 XT gives us an average 1080p frames per second at 101.7 versus 80.2 for the 5060. So as you can see, even in 1080p, a big jump in performance of the 9060 XT over the 5060. Going up to 1440, same exact story, a 73.8 average FPS for the 9060 versus a 59.9 or barely a 60 FPS for the 5060. If we go ahead and move on now to Black Myth Wukong, I want to point this out. This is a very heavily NVIDIA biased title. We use this title because we also use the very heavily AMD biased title of Borderlands. So it kind of shows you, depending on the games you want to play and depending on the developer influence by the manufacturer in NVIDIA versus AMD and the money they're willing to throw at the studio, will sometimes determine the type of performance that you get. Unfortunately, those politics absolutely do exist when it comes to gaming. So the 5060 is giving us a 65.8 average FPS in Black Myth versus a 45.1 when it comes to the 9060 XT. So we're talking 30% less performance for the AMD card versus NVIDIA with this title. Now in 1440p, same story, the 5060 Prime gets a 44.3 average FPS versus the 9060 XT's 29.9. Again, very heavily NVIDIA biased title. If you just look at our charts, you can see that. Almost the whole top of the chart is NVIDIA with a couple of, like 9000 series, like 9070 XT actually does pretty well versus like the 7000 series when it comes to the old Navi architecture. But you can see the bottom half of that chart is heavily AMD. Now, if we go ahead and flip the script to Borderlands, which is a very heavy AMD title, you can see our 9060 XT Reaper is giving us a 140.3 average FPS. It's an older title. It runs very well even on